Educate, entertain, enjoy. You're listening to Aspen Waite Radio.
You're listening to Outstanding Paul, Outstanding
that made him laugh. This is Outstanding Paul, and it's Monday, and it's the Aspen Waite Radio Breakfast Show. And we're now over to our live interview, and today our special guest is Paul Gaffney. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, Paul. Lovely to talk to you.
Yeah, so it's always a bit nervous for me because you never quite know whether everything technology is going to work, and you're going to be going, I go, hello, Paul, and you go,
and whether the person's going to turn up.
Yes, so interesting. So how did I come across Mr. Gaffney? So I guess if it wasn't for the pandemic, I actually would have properly met you by now. The Defence Medical Welfare Service entered the Southwest Business Awards for Great British Expos. But you're based in Hampshire, aren't you?
Yes, we're just north of Andover.
North of Andover. Whereabouts?
It's a place called Rendham Park.
Okay.
Actually, very nice in the grounds of a stately home. And we have the stable blocks next to a stud farm. And we're very, very lucky to have such a lovely environment to work from.
So what was it you that supervised the entry for the awards, or did you?
Well, it's very much a team effort. We have a regional manager who runs the south of England for us. We also have a lady who's very, very good at pulling together all the various strands of what we do and putting together a good persuasive case, highlighting the work that we do. And of course, we've a lady that does our marketing as well. So it's really a team effort. But I mean, the reason that we're able to fill in such a good application is all our welfare officers on the ground who do such a brilliant job for everybody.
I don't know whether you're able to answer this question, but what sort of budget does the DWMS have?
We operate just above £1.5 million a year.
What, of spending?
Sorry?
Of spending?
Well, yes. We really just break even as an organisation. Okay. We're a charity, so the rules for a charity is just have to have 3 months' worth of reserves. And any money that we get in, we put back into delivering the service on the ground.
So, I didn't actually realise the full extent of Paul's backstory today, and very bravely, he's said he would like to talk about some of his experiences, some of which I suppose were extremely harrowing at the time. I have to say, you and I are hewing out the same rock, because one of the things, and in fact, I have Alec at Great British Expos to think about this. I've written 3 books now, which are, unusually candid about the reality of being in business, if you like, as opposed to what people normally say. So some of the struggles I had with, to get through the day and all that sort of thing, So I think your willingness to help the wider community by discussing your own personal problems is fantastic. So I think so listeners, get your tissues out for a bit later. So who is Paul Gaffney? So tell us about your formative years, Paul.
So a very normal upbringing, lovely parents. My father was from the East End, had pretty rough upbringing. As a child, sort of blitzed in the war, sent off to the countryside, then brought back, had various pretty difficult times. My mum's a daughter of a bank manager, and so the 2 of them getting together was fairly unusual. Rather well-heeled middle-class lady meets the chap from the East End.
How did she meet him, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't know if I can tell you that. I think he was walking down the street, and she was putting the shopping she'd just done into her car, and he smacked her on the behind.
Really? And she didn't punch him?
Well, I think she gave him a mouthful.
Yeah.
But then they met in a dance hall later that week, and the rest is history, as they say. Yes.
So what actually did your father do as a job?
Various jobs. He went off into the Navy when he was younger.
Okay.
Served in the Royal Navy, was part of the commissioning crew for the Royal Yacht Britannia a long time ago, and then came back, opened up a barber's shop in Lewisham in London, and then did a bit of a change of career and set up a building business across London.
Well, himself as the owner, you mean?
Yes, him and his brother and sister.
That's very brave of him.
Yeah, they worked for the GLC and would repair all sorts of vandalism on an ongoing basis. They would mend all the windows in a school, and the next day they'd all be shot out again with an air rifle, that sort of thing.
Oh dear.
Yeah, and then eventually became a building inspector down on the south coast, where I was sort of brought up in the Eastbourne area.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, no, very nice childhood, I must say. And then I went off to university, as everybody did in those days, and well, not everybody, but a lot of us tried to.
Yeah.
And I studied a subject called minerals engineering.
Wow. What university was that?
Birmingham University.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I loved it. And Birmingham University is a very good place. And ironically, we have some welfare officers based at the QE, Queen Elizabeth Hospital, which is right on campus. And so it's a real trip down memory lane every time I go and visit the team there. Had a great fun.
What made you choose minerals engineering, for goodness sake?
Well, I liked sort of science and engineering and things, and was going through the prospectus, didn't really know what I wanted to do. And it just struck me as being something very interesting. It also had the advantage that you had to do a summer placement, and they tended to be abroad. So in the second year, I went off to South Africa.
Oh, wow.
Did 3 months there on the gold mines
or something, is it?
Yeah, on the gold mines in South Africa. Yeah. And then when I graduated, I went back and spent 3 very exciting years in South Africa, working on gold mines, uranium mines, and visited diamond mines, all sorts of things.
So what was exciting about it?
I think when you're that age, early 20s, you're off to see the world, aren't you? And I, because I was going abroad and I had a fiance, we actually got married and graduated, got married and emigrated in a 3-month period in 19...
Emigrated?
Well, went off to South Africa. I think my parents, thinking about my parents at the airport in floods of tears. As a parent now, I know what that must have felt like. But at the time, bye, we're off. So no, it was amazing. We set up home, and just a completely different culture, very different way of living. We were outside of Bloemfontein in a place called Velkom, which really was a cowboy town, to be honest.
Is that an Afrikaans district?
Very Afrikaans, yeah. I can remember that I really was seen as a rather, English, not fitting in sort of person until I learnt to swear fluently in Afrikaans. And once I gave it back, then I started to get accepted. You had to live the life.
It's interesting, isn't it? Couple of things about Afrikaans. I actually said on one of my shows last week that Afrikaans is actually one of the easiest languages in the world for English people to learn. And as you probably would know, they don't have a very complicated vocabulary. So you don't have, I think, even difference like I and we and things like that.
Yeah.
The thing that always staggers me, it'd be interesting to get your rundown on this, is obviously, it's true to say that Britain actually invented concentration camps, if that's the right way of putting it. So in the Boer War, we really didn't treat the Boers very well, and yet in my opinion anyway, I have a lot of South African friends and contacts. The two countries seem to never have been closer,
Yeah,
which is a remarkable thing,
yeah.
really.
We have friends there still, and we go out there and have a wonderful time. I mean, it's a country I lived in for 3 years, so I've really got an affinity with it. It's a country in a state of flux right now. You know, it's changing, but it's a beautiful place. Anybody, you know, if they get the chance to go, especially to Cape Town, they really should. And you know, if you're into animals and things, you know, the game parks are fantastic.
You a rugby man?
Yes, I was watching the Lions on Saturday. Just managed to defeat the Springboks. And mind you, I've got a soft spot for the Springboks, so I was going to win whatever happened.
Yeah, they're probably, I'd say, probably the hardest nation in the world. I mean, in a nice way, you know, they're really hard men, and but
I remember when I turned up on that 3-month first visit to South Africa with a gang of mining guys, a lot of them from Wales. They swaggered out one evening to go to the local rugby club saying, oh, we're going to show them how we do it over in the UK. They came back limping and with bloodied eyes. And you're right, that was a tough gig playing South Africa anywhere at whatever level at rugby.
So what did your good lady do in South Africa while you were, you know, down the mines?
She had a degree in biochemistry. She went and worked in the pathology lab for a while. That proved to be a difficult job. So she ended up getting a job with an organization called Infogold, doing IT type, business analysis type work. It's very important whenever you work abroad that, you know, both of you have a job and you've got a purpose. It's no point sitting at home, especially if we didn't have kids at that point. So yeah, it was very important. She had something to do, which was great.
And what was the name of your wife?
Jackie.
So what made you come back to the UK?
Whilst I was there, I helped to take the books for the mine, you know, the assay results and the tonnage and all that sort of thing, and put it into the computer system, which had just come out, a thing called Lotus 123, which was an early predecessor to Excel, basically a black screen with a Scion bar around it, and sort of got a bit hooked on IT, and we decided after 3 years we'd like to come back, and I was lucky enough to land a job with IBM, a computer company, and spent 13 happy years back in the UK with IBM.
Where were you based?
IBM stood for I've been moved.
Very good.
So, well, our house was tactically between North Harbour in Portsmouth and Hursley, outside Winchester.
Oh, nice.
But I worked all over the place, up in London. I had a 3-year assignment in Germany, just outside Sindelfingen. Again, fantastic time. And Jackie was able to work there as well, doing sort of things for the city, city systems. And I worked within a software development environment where they develop new software.
So I see you speak German fluently?
No. I got to working German when I was there, but that was 1990 when the wall came down. I was there, but I'm afraid I've gone a bit rusty now.
How did you find the Germans at that time?
Do you know, we had the most amazing time as a company to work for, obviously IBM's premium company, but their HR approach to people and the way that they work and HR was fantastic. Everybody would arrive at work at 7 o'clock. They were home with their families by 5 p.m. I tend to work the other way around. I like to start a bit later and keep going into the evening. But no, we were treated fantastically. The way of life is family centered, and you're expected to have as much, proper outside of work time as you are work time. But when people are at work, they were heads down and very concentrated. So it's a bit different to the British culture, I'd say.
Okay. So, it's a good time to play your first track today, which is Buckets of Rain by Bob Dylan. So, how important has music been in your life, do you think, Paul?
Oh, very, very important. I think it evokes so many memories. Just you can hear one chord of something and you're back somewhere. And Bob Dylan with Jackie and I was a very important person. We used to listen to his records a lot, when we were courting, etc. And the album Blood on the Tracks by Bob Dylan, I think, is was our favorite. And I chose this because this is a sort of bittersweet record, really. Although with Bob Dylan, you can't always tell what he meant, but you can interpret the lyrics in your own way.
Okay, that's lovely. Thanks, Paul.
Paul Waite.
Well, I've not heard that song before, Paul. I thought the lyric that stood out for me was "Everything about you is bringing me misery." I wasn't quite sure what to make of that, to be honest.
No, there's some good bits in it as well.
I didn't say it was bad. I mean, maybe he meant sort of that his affection for her was sort of bittersweet, as you put it.
Exactly,
sort of, painful and lovely at the same time, maybe.
Exactly right. And it sort of sums up what Jackie and I went through, really. So I guess we get to the tough bit now. So yeah, we had 3 children, lovely twin girls and a son, and going along nicely in our lives, doing well.
So how old was the eldest child at that point?
The twins were 13, and my son Ed was 10, and Jackie was diagnosed with breast cancer, which, as you can imagine, was quite a shock. And
sorry, how did that happen? Did she feel a lump or something?
Yeah, so it was a lump. Yeah, and we went through the various steps that you go through, both sort of mentally and physically. And she underwent lots of treatments, radiotherapy, chemotherapy. Chemotherapy is very, very tough. And I'm not going to go into all the details, but she did an amazing job of battling that. And after about 18 months, she went into remission, which was great. And so we got on with our lives. And
so
then,
she didn't have to have a mastectomy or anything?
Oh, she did, and she elected to have a double mastectomy. So yeah.
Did they do reconstructive surgery in those days?
She chose not to do that. She couldn't see the point, really.
Gosh.
So no, we didn't go that route. And then after 7 years, the cancer came back. I mean, we knew it probably would at some point in time. And she was diagnosed with both bone and liver cancer. And what really was amazing was she kept going for another 5 years. So in the end, she had 7 rounds of chemo. Each lot of chemo is 6 treatments. I've not met anybody that's managed to go through that much. Each one is pretty horrendous in itself. And to fight the fight that she fought was really quite incredible. I think she really wanted to see the kids launched in life, and Edward off to university. And I think she had that as a target in mind of what she wanted to achieve. And it really is a state of mind in terms of addressing when you're facing such a very difficult situation like that. Both the physical symptoms, the treatment is as bad as the actual disease. And I think the other thing that I always found was you stop becoming you, both of us, because you're defined by your illness. So the first question anybody would ask me is, how's Jackie? And, you'd expect that. And life just sort of revolves around that one issue, really.
Yeah, people aren't, in my experience, most people aren't very good at dealing with people like Jackie. They don't know what to say. And there's a tendency either to ignore the person altogether, treat them like they're some sort of leper, or talk to them like they're a child or something,
Yeah, I think the thing we found, and I completely understand it, I don't criticize anybody for doing it, but you would say what your problem was, and they go, oh yes, my aunt has, XYZ, and talk about their person rather than face having the discussion with you who's in front of them. They deflect to somebody they know. And actually, once you know that people do that, it gets quite irritating. I've just told you I'm not very well, and you're talking about your third cousin,
What was the care like in the NHS at the time?
Oh, it was very, very good. When we first started, so when Jackie had the breast cancer, it was not as advanced as it was 10 years later. She used to have these great big pink syringes of fluid that used to have to be put into her. But as things progressed, it was made slightly more bearable. The problem was the after effects of what's effectively a poison that's being put into you is still just as bad. But the nurses and you can't knock what they do. And of
How
course,
did that affect you, do you think?
I think you just become focused on helping the person as much as you can. You obviously worry about the kids and supporting them through it. We took the attitude of being very open. We tried not to hide stuff, and in fact, after a while, it was impossible to hide things. And just took them on the journey with us, really. And I have to say, amazingly resilient. I think if you're honest with them and share, our kids anyway came through it pretty well, I think.
So how old was Jackie when she passed away?
She was 55, and the end actually could have gone two ways. She was clearly not very well, and the family had gathered. Unfortunately, the NHS care at the time, it was a school holiday, and there was really not very many people around. And we were very lucky that Jackie, in a normal, well-organised way, had contacted an organisation called Rowan's Hospice.
Oh, I've heard of that, yeah.
Yeah. So they're a sort of like Macmillan's type charity. And in that last week, they were there. They were helping administer the drugs and doing washing and nursing and all those things. And so when we got to the final sort of day, actually Jackie was very peaceful, and we were around the bed and able to be there as she passed away. And it's what the best you could have wished for in the circumstances. So to this day, although I sort of run a charity myself, my personal charity is the Rowan's Hospice organisation. And recently I've managed to help in as much as I've joined their ethics committee, because obviously end of life is full of quite difficult ethical decisions. So it's great to be able to give something back to that organisation.
That's interesting. Just sharing with you, one of the things I've making myself out to be a goody-goody. I'm a great believer in sort of giving back and supporting the community. And so the two things I've always, as a person, been very focused on is sort of, I suppose you'd call it cradle to grave. So, what happens to people when they're born, etc., early years, and then trying to give people the best send-off you can,
Yeah.
And so, there's only so much you can do. So the charity or the charities that I've always supported are cancer ones. So in Somerset, St Margaret's Hospice, and I've probably cycled up more mountains than you can imagine. And it's very interesting, actually. I told this story a few weeks ago. When they opened their new wing in Taunton, I can't remember how many years ago it was, about 6 years ago, I actually opened it with the local MP, and it was because they said they thought that, they wanted me to say why I did what I did, and so, I'm a very sort of heart in your sleeve guy. So I basically said, so I cycled 1,100 miles for St Margaret's Hospice in 2010 and raised about £20,000. And I basically just said why I did it, and I, when I felt, tired, I just sat there thinking about, some chap, maybe somewhere, and I wanted him to have a glass of whiskey before he died or whatever,
Yeah.
And I think that sort of, I think one of the things, I don't want to get too political or anything, but one of the things that I think is unforgivable personally, with the treatment of the current pandemic, and I say this as someone who has people close to me who have cancer, is the way that people with cancer have been basically abandoned.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the second story of COVID, isn't it? All the people that have not had their treatment. I know that Jackie was very, very focused on making sure she got the treatment she needed. She had a biochemistry degree, so she was a medical sort of person. I could only imagine the pressure and the anxiety that you'd feel if you thought there was treatment there, but you now can't go into the hospital to get it. It doesn't bear thinking about, to be honest, what some people must be going through. I think that's very tough. And I think, 5 years down the line, when we look back at this period, there'll be the second wave of people that were affected indirectly by the pandemic.
I mean, I presume you have to deal with things like the British Medical Council. I just don't understand their attitude, why it's so polarised towards COVID, when they have a duty of care to everyone. I don't get it.
I think they're just trying to protect everybody that they can, in that setting. And I think it's an unprecedented situation. And I think there's a lot of people doing the very best they can. And I think that, the NHS staff have responded incredibly well, really have. So I don't have that much to do with the BMA. I have no idea, but I just think about the staff on the ground and them carrying on and going into work in what really, for the first period anyway, was a complete new unknown situation.
Well, I was actually in hospital when COVID
Were you?
struck. Yeah, so it was, and effectively, I've been. I'm actually quite pleased about it in a funny sort of way. I've been completely abandoned.
Right.
So I've not had one single appointment that I would have had. So I say I'm pleased because I'm not the sort of person who likes doing this, but instead of going to sort of 4 weekly clinics, I've had no clinics.
Wow.
Anyway, enough of that. So Ed Gaffney, not quite a Gaffney because he's only got one F and you've got two. So
no, he's got two Fs.
Is he?
That's my fault. Sorry about that.
Oh, he has got two Fs. So this is your brother?
No, this is my son.
Is it? Oh, it is your son. Yeah.
Yes, it's my son, Edward. I think all three of my children have been incredible through all this experience, and in terms of how they've developed as individuals, and they've all gone off and made their own lives. They have partners who were pillars of strength through the difficult years, and Ed is an example of the three of them, really. I don't want to pick him out per se, but he's got just an innate talent for singing. He's had it since he was a nipper.
And does he use it, professionally or
well,
something?
He went to the Conservatoire in Manchester, the Royal Northern School of Music, and did singing. So he's trained, to be an opera singer.
Oh, wow.
He decided at the age of 23, which is too young to start as a male voice anyway, to go out and get a job. So he works in the charity sector as well, doing fundraising. He's based in London. And it's a perennial discussion between dad and son of, I always encourage him to use his talent and give it a go. And he says, well, thank God I didn't, because no entertainer through the COVID period is making any money at all. They're working at McDonald's or Burger King or whatever. You know, I always want him to go and do his singing, but he does have a fantastic voice. He always has had, and once it was trained, it became even better.
So how did he come to have this recording made?
Well, one of the things we used to do was every Christmas we'd take him along to a recording studio and get 2 or 3 tracks done. So he's got a sort of back catalogue of, let's call it, proud parent tracks. But I'm glad we did it, because you can see how his voice develops through time. Not always something he wanted to do, but it was more for us than anything else. But I'm so glad we've done that. And now he's going off and doing evening singing stuff, and you know, he'll do it from an amateur point of view. Whether he decides to go professional down the line, that's his life choice, isn't it?
Okay.
He's got that talent.
Some enchanted evening, you may see a stranger. So let's take it
go.
away, Ed.
Yeah,
look forward to
lovely,
it.
lovely.
Some enchanted evening, you may see a stranger. You may see a stranger across a crowded room, and somehow you know even then that somewhere you'll see her again and again. Some enchanted evening, someone may be laughing. You may hear her laughing across a crowded room, and night after night, as strange as it seems, the sound of her laughter will sing in your dreams. Who can explain it? Who can tell you why? Fools give you reasons, wise men never try. Some enchanted evening, when you find your true love, when you feel her call you across a crowded room, then fly to her side and make her your own. Or all through your life you may dream all alone. Once you have found her, never let her go. Once you have found her, never let her go.
That was very nice, Paul. I was quite moved by that, I have to say.
Yeah, no, he's a talented lad, and that was recorded before he went to the conservatoire, so his voice has filled out and is quite rich now.
Yeah, just it inspired me to say something. So when I was less than 11, I can't remember what age I started doing this. I actually used to disappear into my parents' toilet for large amounts of time, and this is true story. Trying to think about what it was like to be dead.
Oh wow!
So I don't know whether that's a very weird thing for someone to do. So I used to sit there and I just couldn't contemplate being dead, and I used to think about how scary it would be to be dead,
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is I don't know whether, your experience with Jackie, you can, empathise with this. I think having children is a complete game changer. So every day that goes by, I realise, for instance, like there's more of me and my children than I thought.
Yeah.
You can see that the older they get, they can't help. What's the Robbie Williams song? I've started to dress a bit like him.
Yeah.
I remember going into the gym for the first time and looking in the mirror and seeing my dad looking back at me.
Yes.
For instance,
I think it's very true, and there is a sort of reassurance that somehow you're going to carry on, at least in people's memories, for a while. I think that is true, and my kids are very important to me.
And do they live locally to you?
No, they're distributed around. One lives an hour and a half away. One lives up in London, and one of my daughters now lives in Copenhagen. She married a Danish chap, and we've got our first grandchild on his way. And obviously, I've not been able to see her for 18 months because of COVID. And it's touch and go whether we'll make it for the birth of first grandchild. So we shall see. We shall see.
So you were saying to me that so you've had quite a successful, by anybody's standards, a successful career in in the corporate world. Drifted into IT, on the board of Racal Telecom, Delcor. Got involved in long-term strategic decisions with big budgets, hundreds of millions of pounds.
That's right. Yeah.
So was it Jackie's passing that took you into the Defence Medical Welfare Service?
Yes, indirectly. In the final year, really, she needed much more support. I needed to be home more. So, and when you work for an IBM or for a Dell or one of those big companies, it's 110% commitment, as you know, and you can be sent off around the world. With Dell, I was off to Austin every other week,
Wow.
in the US. And so I decided that I would sort of set up a individual consultancy, as so many people do, and go in and be what's called an interim manager. So if somebody was short of somebody on their board or had a post missing, then I'd go and fill in for 3 months. And then I had the opportunity to take breaks if I needed to. I was my own boss. And I was looking at different postings, and I saw the advertisement for the Defence Medical Welfare Service needed somebody to help them on the business development side of things. And so I phoned up the recruitment agency, and they said, well, we don't understand why you've applied. You're non-military and you've never worked in a charity. And I said, yes, but the advert says they need a business person to help them.
Yeah, it's
anyway,
oxymoron and everything.
Yes, so I came along.
How did you get the job then?
Well, I managed to persuade the recruitment lady to put me on to the end of the day. And then I met the then chief exec and had a really good conversation with her. And she made the decision that I was actually what was needed to help her and the organisation move forward.
How long did it take you to get her job?
Oh, I wouldn't say it like that. She
well, she obviously left or something. I'm not saying
yeah, no, exactly. I was here for 2.5 years, 3 years, and she decided she wanted to retire. So I then took up the reins and carried on where she had left off, really. And Yeah, it's been fantastic.
So this is an organisation that I've certainly never come across before until looking at your candidacy for the awards,
Yeah,
and it popped
yeah,
up on my screen. So I see that actually it was formed in 1943, for goodness sake.
yeah.
So
Nineteen
tell us a
43.
bit about the backstory.
Sure. So during the Second World War, the government went to the Red Cross and St. John's, the Order of St. John's, and said, we need some welfare support in the military hospitals across Europe. And we had a lot of injured people coming back. And obviously, the military medics were looking after them from a medical point of view. But there's a lot that goes on. If you've been injured, you've got all the stress of maybe losing a limb or going blind or whatever. And also the stress on your families, all sorts of things. So the service hospitals welfare service was set up. We still have links with St. John's and the Red Cross today, and in fact, wear their insignia on our uniforms. But we are an independent charity, and from there, since 1943, so we've been going 77, 78 years. We've worked very, very closely, initially with serving military folks, deploying to hospitals out on the front line. We still have welfare officers that served in Afghanistan, Camp Bastion, and really the only charity to deploy into the front line, really on the front line with medics. Probably our biggest challenge is nobody's ever heard of us. The people that have are people who have had an issue themselves serving in the past, or more latterly, we've expanded to support veterans. And we're now moving to taking the view that the front line has moved. The front line is all around us. The NHS staff have been on the front line for the last 18 months. Now police force are on the front line on a daily basis. And the experience and the knowledge that, our welfare team have gained in very traumatic circumstances is equally applicable to organisations that, put themselves on the front line. And that's where we are.
So which way round is it? Does I don't know, let's say you've got a traumatized Afghan veteran or something. Do they find you, or do you find them? And how does that happen?
It can be a combination of both. The way we get referrals in is a multitude of different ways. A lot of the time, because we've people in the hospitals pre-COVID, of course, we would make sure that everybody knew that we were around within the hospital. Okay. And that if there was a veteran, then the nurses or the doctors would refer them to us, and we would help the medical staff by supporting what they're doing clinically with all the non-clinical support that people need.
So correct me if I'm wrong here. So on your website, it basically suggests that armed forces, police, NHS and merchant navy personnel. Is that true? Do you look after them?
Yeah, we look after all of those folks.
So it's not just military.
No, it was. But as I said, we've decided we can apply our skills and knowledge to a much more diverse group. So we really see ourselves as supporting anybody that's on the front line now. Obviously, we get funding from specific groups. So the Merchant Navy welfare group give us some money to support those. The NHS Veterans Trauma Network, will help them. We get funding from a lot of the military benevolent funds. There's the Soldiers Charity, the Royal Navy, Royal Marines, and the RAF benevolent funds. They help us because we can look after those folks that are in a specific hospital setting. There are a lot of military charities, but we're a specialist one that are really based around that hospital welfare. Because you don't want to duplicate charitable work. You want to make sure you've got expertise and trained people that are very good at what they do. Do
you sometimes find that obviously, you've only got a limited budget, so you literally couldn't help everyone.
Yeah.
Do you sometimes have to make painful decisions as to who you can and can't help?
We never say, we've never turned anybody away.
Okay.
The frustration for me is really more about geographic location. So we are funded very well in the south of England. We have teams in the Midlands. We're patchy in the north. We don't have anybody in Wales at the moment. And we have a good, strong team in Scotland. And we have a small team in Northern Ireland. We also have a team out in Cyprus over there as well. But there are times when we know that there is a need and a demand, say the Northwest, and we just don't have people on the ground. We do have an emergency service, which we sort of fund from any money we make in excess, which covers the rest of the country. But it's not the same, because the real piece where we come to the fore is where we can do face-to-face meetings and really be with someone through that tough month or two that they're going through during their medical situation. And we'll give telephone support remotely, etc. But where we're really coming to our own is that face-to-face time. We're really giving people time and solutions to their problems.
So do you have an active business plan? Are you, do you have a vision to take out, roll out this program to more people, help more people across the United Kingdom?
Absolutely. And we're gradually getting there. So, we made a decision as, a board, and let me just mention our trustees, who obviously are volunteers. They're always there to help us and support us. They do fantastic work. And we made the decision to diversify and move just from serving personnel into veterans, and then to expand into the blue light services and other organisations. COVID's really thrown up the NHS as, frontline workers. So, moving from one main contract with the MOD in the past, I was counting the other day, I think we have 25 different organisations and funding sources. So we've diversified hugely and applying our skills in a lot broader context now.
Okay. So what I'd like to do is play your final song, and then we'll just conclude, if we may.
Okay.
So your final song is Still Not Dead by Willie Nelson. So what's the relevance of this then?
Well, I'm a very lucky chap, because I've met another lady. There's another lady in my life, and I've remarried. And I think it's a message to everybody that there's light at the end of the tunnel, when you go through dark days. And we were out in America, and we heard this record. Poor old Willie Nelson, the social media kept saying, Willie Nelson's died. And of course, he'd wake up the next morning and hear he'd died himself. So he wrote this song. And when you get to a certain age, I think it's got quite a good message that you've woken up and you're still alive.
Okay.
This is Paul Waite on Aspen Waite Radio.
Yeah, it's funny. I quite often turn around to my children and say things like "I'm 2/3 dead" or something, which doesn't seem to go down very well. So we've got 3 minutes and 45 seconds left, Paul, just to focus the mind. So your second wife, and her name is
Hillary.
And does she work still, or
she goes out into the community and looks after people's feet.
Okay.
That's what they pay her to do, but actually she's much more of a social worker and chatting with the elderly and company for them. And she's brilliant in our valley. She knows everybody, everyone knows her, and she cheers everybody up. And I must say, I'm a very lucky chap.
Oh,
it just shows that you get a second chance.
So are you a fatalist?
I don't know, really. I guess I probably am a bit, but I do think that you make your own luck as well. I think it's about having a positive attitude, etc. And work hard, play hard, and above all, have a sense of humour. I think is very important, as that last track showed, really.
And do you ever feel that Jackie's still with you, or not, or
I think sometimes I hear her whispering, "Well, you shouldn't have done that," or "Don't be stupid." But it's mostly when I'm with the kids, that's when she's there. But as I say, I'm formed a really lovely new life now, and that's brilliant. What I would like to take the chance to do, if I may, Paul, is just recognise the team here at my Defence Medical Welfare Service. You know, one person gets the limelight, and it's not really right. We have an absolutely incredible team here. Our welfare officers on the ground do fantastic work. They're so creative and coming up with solutions for people that are going through tough times. It never ceases to amaze me. And we've also built a management team here that is much more than the individual parts. You know, it's very rare in a business career to have a really high performing team. And what we have here is mutual respect, different skill groups, complete trust in each other. And it's really just an honor for me to work with this group of people. And I didn't want to let this opportunity go past without, you know, mentioning, you know, what a fantastic team we have here.
I can see you're a very sensitive, empathic sort of leader. So I'd imagine you're very, very fair and very forward-thinking. So I take it you will be entering the National Business Awards.
Well, yes, we absolutely would love to.
Yes, so look, I obviously, you know, I'd like to point out to everyone that I'm free from bias, obviously, you know.
Right.
Just, one thing I would like to do, and it's good that Drew's listening to this, so I'd quite like to do a feature on the charity for our next magazine.
Oh, that would be lovely.
That'd be all right. Yeah. And
you.
obviously, you know, if we can do anything to help you get funded, then it would be a privilege to do so.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
So, I was looking forward to talking to you, but you haven't let me down. So, thank you for.
It's been a pleasure.
Yes, your intelligence, I think, innate intelligence and honesty and decency shines through. Love the family values and the caring.
And within the charity, everything is based off of an ethics side of things.
So that was Paul Gaffney. This was the Monday Aspen Waite Radio Breakfast Show. Off to the news. I'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks.
Online, on DAB, and on the Aspen Waite Radio app. This is Aspen Waite Radio News.